went to the Value Voters Summit this weekend and saw Dr. Gorka and then Steve Bannon and, of course, Laura Ingraham. But one of the biggest things that was brought up was when you looked around the very, very eclectic room, even though they were all, it's pretty much a Christian audience, one of the things was is that they pointed out that the day of the 30-second commercial is gone, and it's going back to the days of where you walked precincts. But more importantly, where it's people to people in these, and that the people are taking back the election system, that millions of dollars doesn't matter as much as people walking around. And this really reminded me of what you said at CPAC a couple of years ago about how the Goldwater and the Reagan time changed the Republican Party. I think we're seeing that change again. What do you think?
I think that's right. We went through a period, George, when money was everything, where consultants and managers and candidates believed that what you ought to do is raise all the money in the world and put it on television, and that would trump anything else that anybody else might do. We got away from using volunteers in both parties. We got away from knocking on doors. We got away from doing what Tip O'Neill, the Democratic House leader, once said was most important, which was asking people personally for their vote. And that worked as long as both sides did it. But as technology increased and as both sides essentially fought an arms battle with money over television time and people began looking elsewhere for their news, party professionals and candidates began to realize that money, while necessary, isn't everything. And in today's world, contacting voters, contacting your peers, asking your neighbor to vote becomes far, far more important than it has been since perhaps the 1960s.
David, when you say contacting, I agree, but Trump, I didn't see him having a large ground troop as much as a big presence in social media and a big presence on the news, although it was not positive.
Well, social media is part of that, and he played that as well as anybody ever has for political purposes. But there was a ground game. The one thing that had happened was that Reince Priebus, who at that time was chairman of the Republican National Committee, had finally figured out what a number of national party chairmen had not been able to figure out, and that is that in the modern world there are some things a party can do and some things a party can't do. And what the National Republican Committee did was build an unprecedented ground game, which was basically simply turned over to the Trump organization. And as you may remember, during the campaign, most of the fundraisers that Mr. Trump did were for the RNC, and that was for the purpose of fueling that ground game.
Oh, that makes sense. How important is the message?
When we got to Florida, just real quick, when we got to Florida, one of the things was Rubio had already won. You know, he already had the numbers in there, but he immediately turned over his ground game to the Trump campaign. And so whatever was going on with Rubio's also had a trailer of Trump. And it was, and when you walked the precincts, you could tell that they had already been there.
No, that's exactly right. And the ground game is important. The other thing is the message.
Yes.
And the reason that the reason contacting your neighbor will make a difference is you have to have the right thing to say to them. You know, the Democrats under Obama developed the technology to reach more voters than anybody's ever reached, and they turned much of that over to Hillary Clinton. But her message was so bad that it didn't matter that she was reaching voters because they didn't like what she was saying. So so it's a combination of reaching voters, letting them know that you care about them, asking for their support, and convincing them that what you want is what they want. Mrs. Clinton was never able to do that. Oftentimes a brand communicates a lot more than the few words in it to the people who hear it.
Right.
And I think that the Trump campaign was inordinately successful in doing that and in capturing the desires and indeed the fears of the deteriorating culture that occupied so many Americans.